Before we get into this episode, I wanted to introduce one of the partners for the show, Move Pre-Workout. I've been using this over the last year and can massively see the benefit with all my training. And I thought I'd invite Tom along, who was involved in the formulation.
Cheers, Mark. Obviously delighted to be supporting the podcast. And so Move Pre-Workout, we've got a strength-based formula, but this one is specifically designed for endurance athletes. And it's one of the first of its kind. We're just focusing on really high-quality ingredients that are going to benefit endurance performance of any kind. So, yeah, we're really excited by the product and delighted to be supporting podcasts like yourself.
Oh, it's amazing. And this is something that you're specifically taking before your training, before your rides, to be in best possible shape. I'd encourage you to give it a try. Go to movepreworkout.com and for a 20% discount, put the word endurance in at checkout. On with the show. Welcome back to the Endurance Podcast series. Well, I hope I'm welcoming you back. If you listen to the first episode you've tuned into, then there's a lot more to catch up on. The first series was audio only. You might well be watching this on YouTube. Apparently half of the world is now watching podcasts. I don't know who this half of the planet is. I don't have time to watch. I tend to be on the bike, out for a run, taking the dog for a walk, but it is a ton of fun filming the Endurance Podcast series in the real world rather than being virtual. It gives us the opportunity to do some epic rides. We've been recently to Gran Canaria, north of Scotland, and Mallorca, with lots more planned now for 2026. But for this episode, we're at the... I've completely lost the name of the show.
Adventure Travel Show
Adventure
London.
Travel Show, thank you very much. Adventure Travel Show in Islington, London. There's a lot of hustle bustle going on around us.
It's very
Thankfully,
noisy.
these microphones are doing a very good job so you can actually hear us into the future. And for this episode, we've got Mr. Angus Young, one of the UK's best known adventure cyclists, racers, gravel, mountain bike, you name it. Somebody who I've had the pleasure to ride with just once on arguably one of the toughest gravel events in the UK, Land's End John O'Groats off-road, mainly off-road on GB Duro. But that's the only time that we've actually met in anger on our bikes. The rest of the time is just at events like this. So bringing Martin into the conversation and then Angus, I think we're going to learn a lot from this conversation, because you're a man who's actually done a version of what we're about to do this summer, go the length of Europe. So why don't we start there? And I think, Martin, over to you.
Yeah, so for those watching and not just listening, if you are listening, I'll have to describe it. There's a map behind Mark of the bike ride that we're going to do this summer in July, going from Nordkapp to Tarifa. It's 6,000 kilometres. And we're going to do it as a group of 4 and set a group world record to cycle the length of Europe. Angus, you have done a version of this. I was watching some of your stuff on YouTube yesterday as I was on the bike in the gym, actually a bit further, and I've got a quote that I found quite inspiring before you set off. That looks amazing. I wonder how fast it can be done. I didn't need to be fast. I just need to be able to pedal for 16 to 18 hours every day. That's relatively easy. And see all the emojis that I put on the end of that. That's relatively easy. So I thought, that's good news.
Yeah,
was it relatively
easy?
It
wasn't easy.
Was that quote before or after you did it?
I think that was a quote, must have been before. Because I don't think I would have said that after.
It's a very good quote.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Well, it's because when you... I don't know, I have a bit of an issue sometimes with underestimating some of the challenges that I'm going to do. So talking about the length of Europe, so the route I did was called the European Divide Trail, and it was just shy of 8,000 kilometres, but it was all off-road, and it was a fixed route. We'll say all off-road, as much off-road as you can. Fixed route. I'd been led to believe that it was going to be, all these beautiful, pristine gravel tracks and, wonderful rolling terrain and things. But in reality, the route ended up being a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. And I underestimated it. But thankfully, bloody mindedness can go a long way in these things. I managed to get through it, just about. So it took me 32 days to do the distance and a bit of change, which was 16 to 18 hours a day. And I wasn't fast, really. A chap the year after me, he set out to try and set a record as well. And he was riding the same distance I was doing every day, but he was doing it in 11 or 12 hours instead of 16 or 18. But he gave up after a week or so, because his strategy, didn't quite prove to be right because he was trying to be fast.
He went too fast.
He went too fast,
right.
yeah, too fast, and then longer recovery, which should help you.
He was aiming to do it faster every day, but shorter time, but cover the same distance in a shorter time and go fast. Oh wow!
So he was ultimately he's a faster cyclist than me.
Yeah.
And he packed a bit lighter, and rode harder, pushed the pedals more, but it only worked out so well for him. So,
but let's go straight to that, because that's a really interesting point. So, in the world of ultra endurance, define that as you will, but something that lasts for over a week. It's not just about how hard and fast you can ride your bike. It's ultimately about recovery to do the same thing the next day, the next day, the next day. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, people trying lots of different strategies. And when people try different strategies, lots of people then copy them. So, I remember when I did the Cairo to Cape Town world record, a few years later, a group tried to break that record, albeit they were going for the group. They did the first half in exactly the same time, riding much faster, but then because some of them got heat stroke in the Sahara Desert, it all averaged out. And it's that hare and the tortoise. Do you get more recovery? Do you ride harder? Do you sleep more? How do you now think about riding sustainably, and has your approach to that changed over the years?
It's a difficult one because it just takes so much trial and error, doesn't it? So I think, I've done maybe 20, 25 of these events, some, 30, 40 day events, some of them. And I think I've settled on, if I can get 4 hours every night sleeping, I know that's pretty sustainable. It's not easy, but, 4 hours, if I could do 18 hours riding, 4 hours sleep and a bit of faff time in between, and I can sustain that, as long as I've had to so far, which is, 40 days has been my longest. But it took me quite a while to settle on that, I think. When I set out on the European Divide Trail, I was trying to really do like 3.5. I'd do 4 hours stop time to start with, and that really wasn't quite enough for me. And I really pushed hard through Scandinavia, and then just really sort of collapsed. I got to the ferry, so I'd take the ferry from Gothenburg to Friedrichshafen, and just completely conked out in this mad ferry, just sleeping with all these people around me. And I sort of realised at that point.
So pause on that. You were hallucinating?
Yeah. So I'd booked my ferry maybe a little bit too early, so I realised I had to really push to be able to make it in time because I didn't want to miss it. So the first 10 days or 9 days of my trip, I did 3,200k. Which is, 330k a day, which compared to my overall average, which ended up being about 250, was a lot higher because
This is gravel.
This is gravel, yeah. It was faster gravel. The Norwegian gravel and Swedish gravel was really fast, but I went out pretty hard, and it's maybe because I had quite learned how much I had to, how much recovery I really needed to look after my body. But that allowed me to sort of open up a little bit of a gap on the target pace so I could relax into it a little bit more after that, which is another strategy in itself. Building a bit of a buffer mentally can be a really helpful thing, I find. If you've got up over that time and that predicted time, you've got a little bit of slip if something goes wrong.
But if you go out too hard, a lot of people the adaptation, the physical adaptation to ultra endurance, you can be trained as much as you want, but nothing in training allows you to ride 18 hours a day. So if you're going to injure, you're going to get some repetitive strain injury, or there's going to be an issue. It's going to happen in those first 2 to 3 to 4 days. So it's a fine balance, isn't it, between going out fast and not overcooking it to the point. It's nice to put some miles in the bank, but the risk is you don't allow for that time for the bodily adaptation to actually get that sustainable state. Because I always find the first week, the second half of the first week's always the hardest. The honeymoon period's gone, the excitement from the first couple of days, but then once you're into the second week, you're like, okay, I can keep doing this now.
Yeah. Once it sets into you after a couple of days, I was like, I've still got a bloody long way to go. I've got to do this for another however many days, and however long it is, it seems like a long way. But I remember, that first night, I'd, gone out, like the clappers, as you always do. You're excited and everything. And I remember my knees. I got into my bivvy bag, and my knees were just killing me so much. I was like, I've never had like knee pain, but it was just from the strain. And yeah, again, you just not you can do so much training, but you can't prepare like your muscles for it so much.
The conditioning.
So yeah, the conditioning, exactly. But after that, they sort of got used to it. Like, I wasn't worried about it. It wasn't like it was a tear, but it was just like joint pain. Bit of ibuprofen and crack on.
And was it entirely self-supported, just on your own the entire journey from start to finish?
I think I maybe saw half a dozen dot watches en route. And yeah, just my own thoughts for 32 days, which was quite fun.
How many pairs of shorts did you take?
Just the one. Yeah, one pair of shorts, one jersey. I started off with one pair of socks as well.
Seriously?
And that got me through the first 10 days. And
Wow.
I was like, why haven't I got two pairs of socks? So I think one pair of shorts is fine. I'm pretty comfortable going into like a petrol station like toilet and like washing it in the sink and stuff and sticking it on back wet again.
Right. That sounds awful. That sounds
yeah.
absolutely horrendous.
But again, you get used to that.
Yeah.
Because I find that when I've done things with two pairs of shorts, it doesn't actually...
Doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, you have a clean pair of shorts for like a day, and then
Yeah.
what difference does it make, really? You still need to find somewhere to wash them.
Then you've just got two dirty
Then
pairs
you've
of
got
shorts.
two dirty pairs of shorts.
Yeah, right. True. And how about food then? So when I've done the longer ones over the past couple of years, I've always had support, like a camper or a car or someone, for a day or two it's fine. But how do you go about food and carrying enough food and then replenishing and making sure you can get the right nutrition? Do you stop at a supermarket or what do you do?
Yeah, you just sort of stop where you can, really. Because often out, like in, Scandinavia, I was doing like 400 kilometers between resupplies, and you get to a town and there'd be one shop. And you go in there and you find that, or you try and get a hot meal if you can. But it's not always that easy. So you just get whatever calories you can find.
Yeah. Did you ever get any of that tinned fermented fish?
I didn't know.
It's meant to be really nice.
Yeah,
it's meant to smell
heard
good.
That. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Probably not going to fuel you another 200k.
No.
It was funny, the gravel race that we did the length of the UK, there was always a real advantage being at the front of the field, because it meant that when the entire field of riders descended on some little village shop in the middle of the Highlands of Scotland, you got first dibs. And there was one store, I can't remember which village it was in, that there was big complaints from the back of the field because like we'd cleared out all the good stuff.
All the Snickers are gone.
All the Snickers, yeah, exactly. Other chocolate bars are available. It's so true. Like what you crave and what you need when you're like carrying your own kit is not always what you think you will, because there's some things which are going to get you down the road. And there's other things which is actually like, okay, it's an overnight, so I need to think about rationing for dinner and breakfast and getting through to that next point. And that's a totally different game, isn't it? When you're heading into sort of remote parts of the planet.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's sort of shifted with me over the years. I used to effectively just think of like fuel in, like sugar down the tank, into the tank. And now I've started to realise I actually started getting quite hungry. So it's about thinking like what can satiate me well. So I started when I was doing a ride down America this year. I was like really making sure that I got at least like one like proper cooked meal a day, and then I'd like make sure I left with like enough sandwiches and things. Whereas in the past I might have just grabbed 2,000 calories worth of chocolate bars and sweets and then been like, right, this will get me through nice and quickly. But taking a little bit more time to get some, I say real food. Petrol station food is only so good, but it's better than chocolate bars. Can help with that longevity, I think, and just keep you full, because I get quite hungry.
Right.
And what kind of sleeping conditions were you in? Did you have a tent with you? Did you sleep in any nice ditches, any public toilets, or did you get some hotels? Or
so European Divide, I just had a bivvy with me, which is I find the easiest way to go.
Yeah.
Because you can ride as long as you want, and then between 11 and 3, these trails are completely quiet. So you can just fall asleep on the trail, and you're not worried about anyone else coming up on you. So it was most convenient. But then, of course, like in the middle of summer, there's no darkness up in
Yeah,
North
right.
Norway.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you had to think about sleeping with like a buff over your eyes or something, and you know, I didn't need to turn my lights on for the first like 2 weeks of the trip, which is.
How was that then? Would you wake up? So if you wake up in the night, obviously, generally it's dark and you know to try and go back to sleep. Would you wake up and it was light and you'd just be totally disorientated, or how did that go?
Yeah, it's a lot easier. Like, you hear about people going and doing like sled dog expeditions, and they trick the dogs into thinking they've had a full night's sleep because they wake up when it's light as well. And I felt a bit like that. You know, you wake up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's bright sunshine.
So would you just crack on and ride, or would you try and go back to sleep?
No, you just crack on. Like, that's the alarm goes, and then you try and get on a bike as quickly as you can. You get into like a really dialed routine when you're like, I could be, you know, I'd stop for the night, and I'd be like asleep within 10 minutes. Alarm would go, and it'd be another 10 minutes, and I'd be up again.
Right.
Because, I wouldn't even like take my bib shorts off. And then it did, like, once I got towards the end, I got a bit more of a buffer. I did start to like get a little bit more sleep, focus a little bit more on hygiene, and spend a few more nights inside. I think I spent 5 nights inside over the course of the...
Inside where?
It's like a hotel or...
Okay, just whatever you could find.
Yeah, I slept in a museum at one point.
Okay.
Where else did I sleep? I was sleeping in a bus centre in Denmark, a bus stop. And some guy came out and was like, "Oh, do you want to sleep in my camper van? It's just parked outside my house." And it was like, "There's a shower in there, like, leave when you want."
Nice.
Yeah, and he didn't... It was exactly what I wanted at the end of the day, because sometimes you're doing these things and like these people are lovely, and they want to know what you're doing and everything. You can't blame them, but you just want to sleep and you just want them to leave you alone.
You don't. It's interesting if you go into people's houses and you start to sort of unwind and tell stories. I've struggled with this on big projects where actually you think that's amazing and some home comforts and stuff, but it's twice as hard to get back on the road the next day because you've been taken out of that mindset. Sometimes it's better just to stay in the wilderness.
Yeah. So he was just like, like, there's a camper up there, I've left it open, don't have to go in there, knock yourself out. I'm like, fantastic.
Was there any dark moments where you felt like you might want to quit or anything was going wrong? What was the darkest and where was the bottom?
I had a lot of mechanical issues coming through Germany.
Okay.
So for a start, I'd burned through a set of tyres in the last 4,000k, so went about 30k off route to try and find some mountain bike tyres, which was kind of expected. And then just as I was like leaving the city, I realised I'd left my iPhone in some public toilets, went back, cycled about 10k, they'd gone, so I had to try and get another phone somewhere.
Oh, you lost your phone? You didn't get it back?
Yeah, lost my phone, never got it back. And then on the same day, I managed to snap my handlebars. The drops just snapped off at the shifter. I must have had a slow speed crash somewhere earlier, and it just cracked it, but I hit a bump and just the drop just completely came off.
Wow.
So then I was I managed to kind of get it to work, because moving the shift around, but I was riding for that, and then my spoke started to go on my wheel, and then my front brake went. So now it was also Saturday, and the Germans don't like opening bike shops or anything on Sundays, and for some reason they also didn't like opening them on Mondays as well, where I was. So I ended up riding, must have been 600k, with half a handlebar, with missing a bunch of spokes in the back and no front brake, through this technical terrain over into France. And then eventually I got into the Duro and managed to find a shop who could sort me out. But because I built up a bit of a buffer, I knew that I kind of had the time.
And this was a buffer on the previous record?
Yeah. I had quite a big buffer on the previous record. My biggest time commitment was I had to get back for my brother's wedding.
Okay.
So I'd set this arbitrary figure of 35 days or something, which turned out to be a pretty realistic, I was a bit up on it, but a pretty realistic goal.
What about, you talked about a catalogue of issues. Have you built any tips or tricks or things to help you cope when things are against you? Everyone sort of talks about when it's going great, but given the amount of races you've done and the amount of stuff you've had to deal with, is it just sort of suck it up, bit of like lived experiences, or is there actually anything that viewers and listeners can go, that's quite a useful way of thinking about it? Because grit and resolve and resilience is a great thing to talk about, but it's very hard to, hang your coat on. It's like, okay, great, how do I get that?
Yeah, I think like there's a certain amount of lived experience with it, and you do pick up these little like tips and tricks. So you might have heard someone doing something, like when I was racing out in America this year, my derailleur battery fails, and I heard of like one of my buddies, it happened to another person, who had taken apart a USB cable to get like a tiny bit of copper to like make the connections a bit better. And I thought at that time, I was like, right, I'll log that. Like that's something, if that happens to me, I'll be able to do that. So like I just sort of pulled that one out of the back pocket and like gave it a go, and it worked, and it got me to like
Amazing.
Exactly. So it's like picking up, like always having your ears out for people who've done things.
Little hacks.
Because you never know like when it's going to come in handy.
Especially now bikes are more complicated than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, the adage with bikes when I started 20 years ago was always like reliability, fixability, the fact that you could just fix it anywhere. Whereas now, a lot of modern bikes are it's like now you're choosing componentry, which, especially in a lot of places that you ride bikes, and I've ridden bikes, the local bike shop's not going to be able to fix it. So you really do need it to be very reliable, and if it doesn't...
Yeah, and I think a lot of modern components are very reliable, but they're not fixable.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And like, you're probably going to, compared to components from 20 years ago, I reckon you're less likely to break down on electronic gears, for instance.
Yeah, first time around the world, it had to be a metal frame, internal gearing, everything was about reliability. I didn't even, taking rim brakes, whereas now, obviously, it's all hydraulic brakes and Di2 and whatever else that might be. Amazing, but you've got to...
Sometimes you're just stuffed if it fails. Whereas with mechanical stuff, you can always sort of budget to keep moving.
And talking about global adventures, we're lucky to catch you because you're just back from South America. You're just about to head off to New Zealand. So, what are you up to at the moment? You've not been racing. You've been taking life easy.
Yeah. So in July, I quit my job teaching. I say quit my job. Well, I did, but a bit of a career break. Spent a bit more time riding bikes, and my wife has taken a sabbatical. So we spent 3 months down in South America, touring at like a nice relaxed pace. So we flew out to Bogota, Colombia, and then just sort of wound our way down south, down the Andes, trying to take in as much off-road mountain biking as we could, really. And it was a real nice change from racing, because you can actually stop and look around and have a chat with people and do a little detour, and then if something goes wrong, it doesn't always matter that much. You can thumb a lift to a town and take your time, get it sorted, as opposed to having to, be a little bit chaotic and just bloody minding your way through it.
And I mean, I'm not sure Nikki, if she ever watches or listens to this, would ever go on a 3-4 month bikepacking expedition with me, but any hints or tips for going on a big exped with your wife or husband or whoever?
Meg's pretty hardy, and she puts up with a lot of me, and I find sometimes I find it difficult not to go into like teacher mode or like trip leader mode. But yeah, I do end up just sort of planning a lot, and she's just sort of is very long suffering and will very happily just follow along with what I'm doing. But it's like any things in relationships, just communication, isn't it? And even like a lot of non-verbal communication, you can pick up when someone's tired pretty easily, especially if they're your partner.
It's such a cool thing to do together. I don't think it's ever going to happen in my world.
I don't think there's a chance of it. Is your plan to go back into teaching, or what does the future hold?
Yeah, when I run out of money, I'll go back into teaching.
When you run out of money, okay. How long have you got?
We'll see. Depends how many sponsors I can pick up.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so the last sort of 5 years or so, I've sort of been saving up, and my profile's been growing a little bit, and 5-6 years of teaching was enough I realised that I can do something else for a little bit.
But it's actually interesting because that's what Neil said. We had Neil Lawton on the podcast earlier, and he was saying this idea of you've got to do adventures as you live your life. You can't store up your life to then do adventures, and he's managed to punctuate his entire working career with adventures, and it was such a cool message, don't you think?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably how I'm going to end up playing things.
He funds his adventures through his work, pretty much is how he was describing it, wasn't he? But then his work were his adventures too.
Yeah. The Endurance Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Enjoy Travel. Huge thanks for all that they do. And I don't need to introduce my co-host, but over to Martin Mansell to explain Enjoy Travel.
So Enjoy Travel brings you car hire, hotels, airport parking lounges with a loyalty platform, meaning you buy 9, you get your 10th free. And you can mix and match across any range of our products. You don't need to just buy 10 car hire, you could buy a hotel, a car hire. And we're giving you a special discount code to celebrate our podcast, which is RID3R, as in rider, and you'll get up to 30% off everything.
So click on Enjoy Travel. It's been amazing for these epics, makes our travel so much more enjoyable and seamless. So thanks Martin, thanks Enjoy Travel. Tell us what's on the horizon. You're about to head out to New Zealand. What's in store?
Yeah, so the big goal out in New Zealand is racing
and I don't need to introduce my co-host, but over to Martin Mansell to explain Enjoy Travel.
So Enjoy Travel brings you car hire, hotels, airport parking lounges with a loyalty platform, meaning you buy 9,
so it's sort of one of the most
and you can mix and match across any range of our products. You don't need to just buy 10 car hire, you could buy a
lot of it's
hotel,
on private land as well.
And we're giving you a special discount code.
It doesn't really get an opportunity to be ridden much
because
it's closed. And the event only happens every other year.
Up to 30%
so I'm really looking forward to that one.
Everything.
So for those in the UK, what would be the closest comparison? Something like the Highland Trail 550?
Yeah, probably something like the Highland Trail.
So much more enjoyable and seamless. So thanks Martin, thanks Enjoy Travel.
Yeah, pretty hard.
Tell us what's on the horizon. You're about to motivated? New Zealand, what's in store?
Yeah, so
I see you very much as an events guy, but equally they're quite a wide variety of sort of gravel, mountain biking, all over the planet. What motivates you? Are you trying to figure out something about yourself? Are you trying to win the race?
So
I mean, both would be nice, but whereas I'm somebody who spent my life doing expeditions, you're somebody who spent your career entering these some of the world's hardest races. I've only ever done one, and it was with you. So what motivates you?
Happens every other year. I always find it very difficult to explain where my motivation actually comes from. Because a lot of the time it's just, I'll see something and think, oh, that looks really fun.
Hardcore.
Yeah, pretty hardcore. And I'm quite a competitive person as well.
I saw that.
So, you know, I always like beating people.
A wide variety of sort of gravel, mountain biking,
and I think that's a lot of it does come from that.
Are you trying
and it's, if I see someone's done something, it's not like I'm trying to one up them.
Both would be nice,
but maybe I see like a little way that they can improve on it, or something that they might have missed. And I think that's like an opportunity for me to like show my stripes a little bit.
And it was with you. So what motivates you? I can imagine you as a teacher going,
I always find it very
difficult to explain. It's the taking part that counts, and then in your private life you're like, I'm going to win.
So a lot of the time I think people, I'll see something and think, these days, that looks really fun. Some people are like quite scared to put themselves out there, to be seen as competitive, person as well. To like want to... You know, because I always like beating people. I really enjoy winning races, and I think that's and like, a lot of it does come from that. That might seem like an obvious thing to say, and like quite self-centered, but ultimately, you know, it's a really nice feeling winning races. Maybe I see like a little way the process of like planning everything, like to a T, preparing yourself, and then when it all comes together, and it's not always winning. Like I've had loads of races I've been really pleased with the outcome and not necessarily won. But I like that process of
I'm going to win.
Coming up with an idea, I think planning for it, and then these days hopefully it comes out. Some people and that's like that little bit at the end that you get to put themselves out there to be seen. It's a really nice feeling.
It's a reward, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, because it. And then, I really enjoy like working in teaching, winning races. It is really nice when I have like students or ex-students coming up to me and ultimately saying how they follow my adventures and races, and the process of like and that's a planning everything because it feels nice when someone comes up to you and say you've inspired them, and then when it all comes together, it's a really nice feeling. Winning. So there's definitely a part of me that likes doing that. You know, I like the honesty.
You know, you're very straightforward. I like winning. I like that process, and I like the recognition from winning, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah. And it is also fun. Like even like intrinsically, I love riding my bike. like
Is
in wild
It's a
places,
really nice feeling,
and
honestly.
not,
It's a
even less wild places.
Yeah.
There's something there as well. Like
And then
in places
like,
that people
working
might not
teaching,
necessarily see in that light
it
as a
is
bit
really
adventurous.
nice when I have like
you know, just doing
students
long
or ex-students
long rides around
coming
the
up to
UK,
me and,
or
you know, saying hello
people
for
might not
my
think about it as
adventures
an
and races.
adventurous destination, but you can have an adventure.
Yeah, and that's
you know,
again
anywhere,
because it
really.
feels nice.
Yeah.
When
We've got
someone
Marcus
comes up to you
Stitz
and say
helping us
you've
with the filming
inspired them.
today, and our
It's
project in
a really
lockdown was
nice
explore your
feeling.
boundaries. It was the idea of
So
within
there's
10
definitely
miles
part
of
of me
where
that
you
likes
live,
doing that
how do you
as well.
find
I like the honesty.
home
You know, you're
in an
very
unfamiliar way? How do you
straightforward. I
see
like
new
winning,
parts of the
and I
stuff
like
which is
the
right on your
recognition
doorstep?
from
You don't
winning.
have to go to the
It's okay to say
Atacama
that.
Desert to have an adventure.
And it is also
So that was
fun.
the whole
Like,
ethos.
even, like,
Shout out to
intrinsically,
Marcus who's
I
filming
love
right
riding my
now.
bike.
Over to you, Martin.
Wild places
We've got
and not, even less
a
wild
lot of
places.
experience here in
something
terms of
there as
ultra
well.
endurance.
Like,
Obviously, what we're doing,
places that
Race
people
Europe,
might not
is
necessarily
road.
see in that light is a bit
You don't call it
adventurous.
off-road. I mean, you're more of a gravel
You know, just
off-road
doing
guy.
long rides
But,
around the UK, or
now that we're in the year that
people
it's going
might
to
not
happen, it's funny because when we
think
were
about
filming
it
the
as
endurance
an
podcast
adventurous
series
destination, but you can have an
throughout the
adventure,
autumn, it was always next
you
year,
know,
next year,
anywhere
next year. Whereas
really.
now it's
We've
this
got
year.
Marcus Stitz helping us with the filming today,
It seems
and
like it's
our project
Yeah,
is
pretty
also
pretty
damn
close,
real
isn't
now.
it? It's pretty
The
close
idea
now.
of within 10
So
miles
yeah,
of
we're
where
going to
you
be
live,
looking
how do
to
you find
average 350
home
kilometres a
in an
day,
unfamiliar way?
probably.
How do you see new parts
The
of
route's
stuff
changed a
which is
little
right
bit
on your
due to
doorstep?
the
You don't
world
have to go
record
to the
parameters.
Atacama
It's got a little
Desert
bit longer,
to have
so
an
it just needs
adventure. So that was the whole
rerouting a
ethos.
little bit.
Shout
But
out to Marcus who's
have you
filming
got
that
any
now.
kind of like top tips for
over
that
to you,
kind of? It's
Martin.
road, not gravel.
We've
There'll be
got-
no, hopefully no off-road. But have you got any top tips for those kinds of distances day after day after day?
Race Europe is road.
It's about just finding your
You don't
routine, I
call it
think.
off-road. I mean, you're more of a
And once
gravel
you've, like,
off-road guy.
You know, it takes a
But,
couple of days, or you know,
now that we're
more.
in the year that
Once
it's
you're
gonna
sort of
happen,
settled
it's
into that
funny, 'cause
routine,
when we
then
were
you
filming the endurance
sort of know what to
podcast
expect every
throughout the
day,
autumn,
and
it was always next year, next year,
you
next
start
year,
to be able
whereas
to
now
just
it's
tick off
this
those
year.
little
Exactly.
those little
It
milestones
seems
you
like
have
it's-
every day, whether it's
Yeah,
to make
pretty-
it to
pretty
your
damn
morning
close,
break
isn't it? It's pretty
or
close
whatever.
now. So
You
yeah,
know, they
we're
always
gonna
say
be
it's,
looking to
typical things they
average
make
350
the goals
kilometres
smaller,
a day,
right? You know,
probably.
break it down into little steps.
The
But
route's
it
changed
does
a little
work.
bit
It
due to
genuinely
the
works.
world record
And
parameters.
you just
It's got
focus
a
on
little
it
bit
day by
longer.
day by
So
day.
it just needs re-
Would you have any
routing
kind
a
of
little
strict
bit, but
routine when you were doing the
you
big
got
one
any
across
kind of,
Europe to
like,
say,
top tips
right,
for
I'm
that
going to aim to
kind of-
stop
it's
every
road, not
3
gravel,
hours
there'll
for
be
no more than
hopefully
15 minutes,
no
or did
off-road.
you
But have
just
got any top
just
tips
go
for
with your
those
feel,
kinds of
go with how you
distances day
felt?
after day after
Yeah,
day?
It's about just
on the
finding your
off-road stuff,
routine, I
it's
think.
some,
And
or
once you've,
necessarily
like,
off-road, but
You know, it
bits
takes
where
a
there's
couple of
when you're
days or,
self-supported
more.
and
Once
there's
you're
less
sort of settled
opportunity
into
of
that
replay, it's
routine,
harder
you
to, or the
sort of know
routine's
what
going to be
expect
different.
every day, and
So you know, I'd wake up
you
in the
start to be
morning
able
and
to
then
just tick off those
I'd try and
these
find,
little
ideally,
milestones you have every day,
somewhere
whether it's to make
to
it
have
to your
breakfast and a
morning break
coffee,
or whatever.
you know, mid,
You
late
know, they
morning.
always say,
Yeah.
you know,
And you know,
typical
that'd be
things
my
they
first
make
little
the goal smaller,
stop.
right? You
And
know,
then
break it
I'd
down
know
into
I'd
little
try and
steps. But
find
it does
somewhere
work. It genuinely works.
late afternoon
And
or
just
like when the
focus
sun
on
was
it day
going
by day
down
by day.
to have sort of my
Would you
dinner
have any
stop, and
kind
I'd
of
maybe
strict
break it into
routine
3
when you were doing
separate
the big one across Europe
sections.
to
But it
say,
doesn't
right,
always
I'm gonna
work
aim
like
to
that.
stop every 3 hours for no more than 15
But
minutes, or
even
did you
just like the little routines
just
as
go
well,
with
like you
your
know,
feel,
like when you're
go
getting
with how
into
you
bed,
felt?
like
Yeah, it's
everything. I
On
don't
the
know, you get it
off-road
so
stuff
dark
is-
so quickly, and you can
some,
just
or necessarily off-road,
settle
but
into it, and you don't
bits
really
where
even need
there's-
to
when
think.
you're
There are times
self-supported
when,
and there's less
like, not
opportunity
on
to replay,
European
it's harder
divide,
to- or the
'cause
routine's going to be different.
on the longer
So,
ones, the
you
sleep
know, I'd wake up in
deprivation,
the morning and then
it's a
I'd
different
try and find
style.
ideally somewhere
Like you're more like
to
fatigued
have breakfast and a coffee
as opposed to
you know, mid-late
like when you
morning.
have like
Yeah.
And, you know,
acute
that'd be my
sleep debt.
first little
and you haven't
stop.
slept for a couple of days.
And
That's
then
when
I'd,
you start
you know,
getting
I'd
like
try
the
and find
squirrely
somewhere
hallucinations.
late
Whereas I
afternoon
find
or
with the
like
longer
when
ones
sun
when
was
you've been going like a
down
month and 4
to have
hours,
sort of my dinner stop. And yeah,
I don't find. I don't know what your experience with that is.
sections, but it doesn't always.
But I don't find
work
like I
that.
get the hallucinations or anything on the longer ones. It's
But
more the
even
if
just
you
like
go a
the
couple of
little
days
routines
without
as well,
sleeping.
like, you know, like
But I
when
have
you're
found
going into
myself
bed, like
on shorter rides,
everything. I think
essentially
so quickly,
not
and
really
you can
knowing
just
what's going on
settle into
for a
it,
little
and you
bit.
don't really even need to think.
And
There
then
are
next thing
times
you know,
when-
you're waking up at
like
3
not on
a.m.
European
in your sleeping
divide,
bag with your alarm alarm going off, and you've
On
just
the longer ones, the sleep
autopiloted,
deprivation,
like into bed,
it's a
stuck an alarm
different
on,
style.
and then you could go the next day.
Like you're more like
sort of.
fatigued as opposed to.
I think
Yeah.
it's
Like
funny,
when you have,
those
like,
shorter
acute
races,
sleep debt,
rides, where you're
and
sort
you
of
have yourself
riding
for a
to
couple of
fail.
days, that's when you start
You
getting
know, it
like
might
the
only be 2 or
squirrely
3 days, like I don't know,
hallucinations.
the North Coast
Whereas I
500
find the longer
record.
ones when you've been going like
It's
a month
amazing
and
what
4
you can do
hours.
when you focus.
I don't
I know it's a
find- I
poor
don't know what
analogy,
your
but you know, if you've had
experience with
5 pints and then
But
suddenly
I
you
don't
need to
find,
act
like, I get
sober,
the
you can do for about
hallucinations
5
or anything
minutes,
on the
Yeah.
longer ones.
but you
It's
can't
more
do it
the-
for that.
if
You
go a
can't do
couple
it
of
for
days
that
without
long.
sleeping.
Like if you
But
have
I
to
have
like
found
switch it
myself-
on.
Yeah,
5 pints and I'm
on
asleep.
shorter rides, essentially,
crawling
not
to bed.
really
But it's so
knowing what's
true. Like
going
sleep
on
depth's the
for a
same.
little bit.
So
And
if you've
then
not
next
done
thing
sleep
you
depth,
know,
just have
you're
5 pints.
waking up at
But my
3
point
a.m.
being,
in your sleeping
if you
bag
have
with
to
your alarm
switch it
going
on, you
off,
can, but you
and
can't
you've just
hold it for very long.
autopiloted,
Yeah.
like, into
Whereas
bed,
when you're
stuck an
doing the
alarm
stuff
on,
which is
and
like
then you could go the next day.
compounding. You're doing it for days and days and weeks and weeks. The worst I've probably had is ocean rowing, when we were sleeping for. We were doing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours on, 2 hours off for a month. So you never really slept for more than an hour and a half for a month, and it just did weird things. The trick I've always thought with hallucinations is they're actually quite fun and entertaining as long as you know that they are hallucinations. You're in trouble when you don't know they're hallucinations. I remember being in the middle of the Atlantic rowing along and looking at forests, and I was trying to hold on to them because they were so much more interesting than just looking out at the water. I was really enjoying the forest, but I was aware enough to know that they weren't really there, and so that was sort of like a state of mind where I was going slightly doolally. But I always think you go to slightly idiot mode, where like all of your emotions are just a little bit afraid, like your tolerance for things going wrong, or that's why it's almost sometimes better to be on your own when you're sleep deprived, because there's nobody else to piss you off. You're just you can deal with your own stuff, but it's quite hard to deal with others.
I've never actually spent a long time sleep deprived in the company of others, and that might explain why my go-to hallucination is, this might say something really dark and deep about my psyche, but I'll hallucinate that I'm just like on a group ride with a bunch of people,
I was aware enough to know that they weren't really
and there are just all these people around me, and just like having a chat with them, like in my mind.
That's great, because that's what you're craving.
Yeah, exactly. It must say a lot about me.
All of your emotions are just a little bit afraid. Like your tolerance for things going wrong, or
wild.
That's why it's almost. The whole topic of endurance as a podcast series is to inspire people, but also to inform people. We're trying to share greatest hits, and some of the stuff you've done is amazing. If you've not come across Angus before, please do check out a lot of the races and events you've taken part of, some of the other conversations you've had. But it's also genuinely to share that information which might help people get out there. And even if talking about hallucinations might be a bit of fun, knowing that if you do find yourself in that place, that not to normalise it, but the fact that it is something that does happen as your mind gets used to doing these things, and clearly operating safely in these environments comes top of the pile. How to look after yourself when you're pushing yourself this hard. But learning from others who have done it before, so that you go to that place and it doesn't scare the hell out of you, is pretty important as well. I mean, we saw that in GB Duro when, I can't remember how many of us left from Land's End. The best part of 60 riders. 13 got to John O'Groats? So that fascinates me. Like, why did 40 people stop riding their bikes? And it wasn't because their bikes broke. It was because the hardship of the ride, stopped them riding the road in front of them. And that's what fascinates me ultimately, because it's not normally the physical ability that gets you through, is it?
It is something that does happen.
And again, it's just
gets used to doing these things.
Bloody mindedness, I keep on saying, goes a really long way. Like, you set your goal on something,
when you're pushing yourself,
and you need to, in those moments,
learning
think like why it is you're doing it, and like, is the situation you find yourself in, is it a dangerous situation, or is it just a little bit uncomfortable and you can press yourself through it? And I've pulled out of races and events before because I've at that time thought I was in a dangerous situation, when reality with hindsight, I probably could have got through it. Like, I probably would have been okay, and it was just a little bit uncomfortable. But in that state of mind you're in at the time,
and that's what fascinates me.
It's very easy to take the easy option.
Physical ability to get you through, is it?
And it's about sort of riding that edge. They always say of like, where are you? Is it uncomfortable? Is it dangerous?
Goes a really long way.
And the more experience you have in these things, the more you can find exactly where that point is. And people do cross it, unfortunately.
And like, is the situation you find yourself in,
the advantage I guess we'll have this summer, but slightly stepping into the unknown, is we'll be a group supporting each other, so you're not just dealing with your own. But in one sense it should be easier because we can hold the wheel, we can support each other, but also we're going to see each other at our absolute best and frankly at our absolute worst as well. We've got to be, that psychological roller coaster is going to be different for each of us. So when I'm up, you're down, and vice versa. And it's going to be fascinating as a group of four of us, Jenny Graham, Hamish Graham and Martin, to see how four people with completely different riding experiences come together for a 6,000 kilometre effort.
Exactly where that point is.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, by far the biggest thing I'll have ever done. 3 times bigger
But
than
slightly stepping
this
into
year's
that role
ride.
will be a group supporting each other, so you're not just dealing with
How
your
do you
own.
go about training for
But
something
in
like
one
that
sense,
then
it should be
on
easier
your
because,
personal
you know,
level?
we can
So the
hold the
7.5
wheel, we
or
can support each other,
7,800
but
kilometre
also
ride
we're gonna
across
see
Europe. Did you
each
have a
other
coach?
at our absolute best,
Did you
and
do
frankly,
gym
at our
work? Did you
absolute
do
worst as well.
cardio
We've
work,
got
or
to
did you
be-
just ride and
that
ride and ride and ride?
psychological roller coaster is
Yeah,
going to be
you can
different
get
for each
almost
of us.
all of the
so,
way
you know,
by
when
just
I'm
riding
up,
as
you're
much
down
as
and
you
vice
can.
versa.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fascinating.
And you can
as a
only
group of
train
four of
so
us,
much.
Jenny Graham,
Right, but yeah, I did have a
Hamish
coach.
Graham and Martin
at the
to
time,
see
I think,
how
yeah.
4 people with completely different riding
And yeah, a lot of strength
experiences
work in the
come
gym.
together for a
So you
session.
did a lot of strength work
more
in the
and
gym.
more, like I train, the more I
I'm
realise how
really looking
important
forward
it
to
is. And it doesn't need to be
But, yeah,
complicated
by
strength
far
work
the
in the
biggest
gym.
thing I'll have
Like,
ever done. 3
Any
times
plan you
bigger
can find
than
online is
this
going to be
year's
helpful.
ride.
Just as long as it's working, like your
How-
main muscle
how
groups,
do you
it's
go
going to
about
really help.
training for something like that?
Can you give us some specifics, what you would do in the gym?
Yeah. So essentially, I'd mainly focus on squats and deadlifts.
Did you do
ultimately.
squats and deadlifts?
So I'd go.
Okay. Did you
I'd
just ride
do.
and ride
I'd do
and ride
2
and ride?
gym sessions a week.
Yeah, you can get
I'd
almost all of the
warm up
way. We're just riding
on
as
like
much
a
as
watt
you can.
bike.
Yeah.
Do a couple of sprints on
and
that.
you can only train
And then my
so
main
much.
effort, I'd either
Right,
start
but
with
yeah, I did
squats
have a coach.
or deadlifts, and then
at the time,
I'd
I
do
think,
like
yeah.
some auxiliary things after that.
And yeah, a lot of strength work in the gym.
And then
Yeah,
I'd
you
go
do
into the other one,
strength work in the gym.
and then do some lunges, and then
Like,
a little bit
I
of upper
train the
body.
more I realise how important
And I'll
it
just
is.
do
And
like
it doesn't need to be complicated
3 to
strength
4
work in the
sets
gym.
of
like
like 6 to 8
any
reps
plan you can
of
find
like
online
whatever
is going to be helpful.
weight
Just
felt like
as
I
long as
was.
it's working,
could
like,
do 1 or
your main
2
muscle
more.
groups, it's going to
for each
really
of
help.
And you get stronger very quickly.
Can you give us some specifics, what you would
But
do?
the advice for the gym work is, if you haven't done any
Essentially, I'd mainly
before,
focus on
like,
squats and deadlifts.
go with someone who knows what they're
Ultimate
doing,
squats and deadlifts. So I'd
or
go
if you don't know
in,
anyone
I'd
like
do-
that, just
I'd
get a
do
personal
2
trainer
gym
for a
sessions a
couple
week.
of sessions
I'd
to show you how to
warm
lift
up
weight properly.
on like a watt
Because the
bike,
main thing is to get the
do a couple of
movements right
sprints on
and
that,
get the form
and then my main
before you
effort,
start
I'd either start with
shifting
squats
huge weight
or deadlifts.
Yeah,
and then
movements,
I'd
posture,
do,
position.
like, some auxiliary things.
Yeah,
Using
after
not
that.
putting weight on the joints
And then
the
I'd go
back.
on to the other one.
Yeah.
And then do
Is
some
your main
lunges and then
motivation
a little bit
for
of upper
the
body.
2 sessions you
And
would
I
do in
just
the
do,
gym?
like,
Is it
3
actually
to 4
about being a
sets
better
of,
bike rider?
like, 6 to
Or
8
is it
reps
about
of like whatever
not
weight
injuring? Is it
felt
about
like
No,
I was-
it's
could
what's
do 1 or
what's
2
through the
more.
pedals.
is power?
Each of
It's
them.
power, yeah.
And
There've
you
been
get
a load of
stronger very
studies,
quickly.
and I'm quite nerdy, so I
But
read up on all of the
advice with
science.
gym work is,
But a lot of
if you
recent
haven't done
studies
any
in the last
before,
5 years
like
that show that
go with
strength
someone who knows
work
what they're
is
doing,
like
or
just
if
as
you don't know
effective
anyone like
as
that,
like
just get
interval
personal
work
training
and
for a couple
can
of
stack with it.
sessions to show you how to
So
lift
where
weight
they've done
properly.
studies where people have
Because
just
the main
done
thing
like
is to
high
get the
intensity
movements
interval
right
training
and
or
get
just
the
some
form
strength work
before
or
you
both.
start shifting.
You know, the people who
huge
do
weight.
both,
So
and
you-
that's even like
So you've noticed a change
Normalised
in
the
your
amount of time.
FTP
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
off doing
weight on the
deadlifts.
joints. And
yeah.
the
So
back.
you know, I'm a
Yeah.
one-person
Is your main
study, but
motivation for
I
the
can-
2 sessions you would
the
do in
times
the gym,
when I've done
is it actually
like
about
gym blocks,
being a
especially
better
through the
bike
winter,
rider? Is it, or is it about
it's like I found
not
it
injuring? Is it
later
about-
on in
No,
the
it's what's-
like
what's through the
spring type
pedals.
time.
It's
That's
power,
when I've
it's
seen
power,
like
yeah.
the
There've been
my
a load of
FTP at the
studies,
highest.
and I'm quite nerdy,
ultimately.
so I read up on
When I've had
the
that
science.
consistency in the gym
But
work
a lot of
and on
recent
top
studies
of
in
the
the
other
last 5
training.
years that show that
Because a lot of people think
strength
about
work is,
flexibility,
like, just as effective
functional
as, like,
fitness,
interval work and
strength
can,
work
and can stack
as
with
that
it.
conditioning.
So
as
they've
you
done
get
studies where
tired,
people have just done
you know,
like, high
not
intensity
picking up
interval training or just
injuries or
some strength
niggles on the
work,
bike,
or both.
strength work, especially
You know,
around the
people do
joints.
both.
So
And
but
that's
it's
even, like,
interesting that
so you would
you're
notice
you're,
normalised
you're
rest
seeing it
time.
first and foremost for
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
Because let's
Yeah.
all be honest,
So,
a
you
lot
know,
of bike
I'm a
riders don't go to the
one-person
gym.
Study,
Yeah.
but
And so it's really
I
interesting to
can-
hear you with your
the
experience
times when I've
prioritising
done,
that
like gym blocks
for
especially
street
through
force
the winter,
performance.
Yeah, I think there's
it's like I found that
like
later
around
on
lots
in
there's a lot of
the,
misinformation,
like,
isn't there?
you know, spring
Cyclists
type
are very
time,
like
that's when I've seen
you know
like
we're quite
my
weight
FTP at the
concerned.
highest.
You know, even if we're not
Ultimately,
shedding every gram,
when I've had that
but like
consistency in
we
the gym
are
work and on
concerned
top
about
of
our
the
weight
other training.
sometimes. And we think if we're going to go in the
a lot of
gym,
people
we're going to
think
get
about
jacked and all these things.
flexibility,
No one's ever gone into the
functional
gym
fitness,
and got too
strength
muscly.
work as
Like who's
that
ever gone into the
conditioning,
gym and thought, oh, I
as
wish
you
I
get
wasn't quite
tired,
as muscly after
you know,
that.
not picking
It
up
just doesn't happen. People
injuries and
spend
niggles
like
on the bike,
years and years and years to put on a bit of muscle. Like, it's not going to happen by accident as a cyclist.
You're seeing it first
and that's like,
performance.
you might put on a tiny amount of like
a lot of bike riders don't go to the
muscle,
gym.
but that's like
And
functional
so it's
muscle.
really interesting to hear
It
you
does a
with your
lot, and like all of the
prioritising that
like extra
for
bits, like the
straightforward performance.
flexibility,
I think there's
like mobility, and
like around a lot of things. There's a lot of misinformation, isn't there?
bits that sort of
Cyclists are
stop
very,
you, injury prevention type
quite weight
things.
concerned.
That's a
even
bonus
if
for
you're
me.
not shedding every
Right,
gram,
it's good to have,
but,
and that's
like,
why
we
that's
are
why I do a little bit of
concerned
upper
about our
body
weight
stuff
sometimes.
and
we
a few
think
other
if we're
more
going to go in
compound
the gym, we're
movements.
going to get jabs
But
and all these things.
ultimately,
no one's ever
squats
gone
and
into the gym
deadlifts.
and got too muscly.
That's sort
Like,
of
who's ever gone
that's,
into the gym
that's
and thought,
what's
I wish I
that's your
wasn't quite
FTP
as
going out
muscly
there.
after
I love that. And
it just doesn't happen. People
and
spend
the
like
staying on weight
years
is
and
more
years
about
and years to
nutrition
put on a
than
bit
it
of
is
muscle.
about
it's music to my ears because I've always mixed gym work with the cycling, just purely pushing out the distance, but filling the gaps with gym work. And a lot of people will say it's a waste of time, but I personally, when I started pushing out the distances, pushing it really out a couple of years ago, and bearing in mind it was following a quite bad knee injury, but I was getting a lot of pain around my hips. I was getting to points where I was like, really, I don't know if I can do this because I'm getting so much pain in my hips and around my back and around different parts, and I do feel the gym work ironed that out a lot and built the strength around the muscles in your legs. So I'm a believer in that as well, and it's good to hear someone else
staying on weight is more about nutrition than I think, especially because there's this really strange coming together in the last
with the cycling
10-15 years
just
of
purely pushing out the distance,
road cycling,
the gaps with gym work,
gravel, which has always been there, but people seem to think it's new.
Say it's a waste of time, but I personally,
and actually fell running, other disciplines, and
really
that purist approach to I am whereas I consider myself just an adventure athlete. I want to have functional fitness and endurance to be able to turn my hand to
I don't know if I can do this,
a whole range of things, as long as it's not anything coordinated like football. But the muscles in your legs. So that sort of very linear view of clearly I'm never going to win a fell running race, but I want to be fit enough to be able to turn my hand to that, and that sort of Puritan view of I have to do one thing because it's sort of a zero-sum game. If I focus on this, I'm not going to be any good at that. I think most people listening to this just want to be able to show up. And yes, they might have an event in mind where they have to specialise for a while, but they just want to have a physicality and a psychology at the end of the day where they can have a great adventure. And the training that they do allows them to have a better adventure because they've put the work in. I think none of us are trying to win the Tour de France here, so we don't need to be that. So that's sort of very linear, sort of one-dimensional about it.
I think so, and I think there is also a lot to be said. A lot of
want to be fit enough to be able to turn my hand to that.
More and more athletes across various sports or disciplines, they are doing more cross training. You're seeing more runners spending more time on the bike, and vice versa as well. So I think what it means to be like a specialised athlete is definitely changing as well. Because even if you're 100% focused on trying to run a super quick marathon time, you could. The best way forward might be to spend a few hours a week cycling as well.
And the training that they do allows them to have a better adventure because they've put the work in. And it's quite individual to who you are. The time pressures you've got. So a lot of people who are working, they simply can't put the hours in. So bang for buck within their training might look something completely different to yourself, who's giving yourself a sabbatical to train for the event. It's an awesome topic, and hopefully it gives people a bit of quiet confidence to sort of learn from others, but also not to be scared to try things out. Just because you've read a book and it tells you to do it one way doesn't mean that's the only way to show up and be able to take on the big event you've got. So you're about to head off to New Zealand. Beyond that, I'm sure there's going to be more races and adventures to follow. For those that are new to Angus Young, how do we find you? How do we follow you?
The best way is Instagram. Okay, just Angus Young 139.
Cool. And it's genuinely a pleasure to follow this guy and all the adventures you get up to. You're really good at sharing those stories. You're really candid around not just the successes but the failures, and I think that's important. And you've been doing it long enough now where to try things out, like you have been in this conversation today. Bring that level of experience and honesty to the conversation, and there's a whole generation coming up behind us going, how do I do this? What does it look like? So keep doing what you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure since we met, 4 or 5 years ago, to keep up with your adventures. It's exciting to see you taking a bit of a career break and riding, with a real focus at this point. I can tell you're enjoying it, and it's genuinely
great time already.
And I think New Zealand is going to be a hell of a race to follow. So we wish you well out there.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Around not just the successes, but the when we come to the summer, we might be giving you a call for any tips as we head to the Arctic.
100%,
long enough.
Yeah, always there.
Thanks very much, Angus. It's been a pleasure.
Well, a big thanks to Mr. Angus Young for an amazing conversation as he crams this visit back to the UK between an epic adventure out in South America with what is going to be a truly terrifying race out in the South Island, New Zealand, which we'll watch with great interest. and some real inspiration for the Europe ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Angus. It's a real pleasure meeting you. What a phenomenal bloke. Really interesting. You ride across Europe. Really.
A teacher. He is a teacher. It's interesting to be good at what you do, but it's another thing to have the language to explain it. So I do think there's something about having a teaching background which helps you communicate it. So thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share, please write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Press the button.
Thanks, everyone.